yeah, so essentially I was trying to balance too many things at the time with working and school and still trying to play basketball. And I didn't have time to study. The schedule I just told you, you didn't hear me mention the word study. So I was just going into exams, just thinking I could, look at some material the night before and do well. And that didn't work out. And ironically, during my redshirt year, the semester before I would have been eligible, my GPA slipped below a 2.0, which was, you know, crazy. Like that was something I never would imagine ever happening to me. And going into after my redshirt year, I was actually ineligible for the semester after. And, there were some family things going on. And I felt like that was God's way of telling me that it was time to, make a decision. And I had a couple of buddies that were a little older than me and they had went overseas and played basketball. We used to play AAU and stuff together. And one of them, I remember he called me and he was in tears. He was playing out in Sicily, and all he did was sprain an ankle, but he was out for a few games and they ended up sending him home. And he just seeing him hurt from the fact that the game that he loved so much was just kind of taken away from him just for an ankle sprain. He had worked so hard to get over there, and that was an aspiration of mine, was to go overseas and make some tax-free money, do that for some years, and come back over here. And just I started seeing that that wasn't all what it was cracked up to be. And so it led to my decision to stop playing basketball in my junior year. And at the time, remember I mentioned I was working at CVS Pharmacy, so I was a pre-pharmacy major at that time. And then I went to my counselor and told her I was gonna stop playing basketball and I wanted to focus on medicine. And first she looked at me like I was crazy because I was coming off of a less than 2.0 semester. And that I remember her asking me, was I sure? And you know, I'm the type of person where if you telling me no is really what I need to hear for me to keep going. And from that day on, I wrote down a 7-year plan for myself, sat down with my family, and just started trucking away at trying to get into medical school. Fast forward a little bit, I was able to get some really good mentors in undergrad that were able to help me get some pretty good internships. One being through Cornell, where I went to Dominican Republic and studied medicinal plants for a summer. And that was very eye-opening because I was coming from Bowie State University, and I was in a cohort with all Ivy League students. And so not only did it open my eyes, it was a very encouraging and a very humbling experience, but it also let me know that, I could really use my brain to get me anywhere I wanted to go. And so coming back from that internship the following year, I did an internship up here in New York with Columbia and worked in a lab working on it's like immunology research in a wet lab. And I think those two things on my resume is probably what got me into medical school. I would go to Howard University. Every first Friday, they would have an open house where you could go and listen to the administrators talk about the admission requirements. You could meet some of the students. And so I would always just show face there and, network and interact, make sure that they knew who I was. And I ended up meeting another mentor at one of those open houses. And at the time, he was a senior medical student. And when it came time to apply, he was the one that was really lobbying for me. And, I believe to this day, it was probably him that got me into medical school. And so I started at Howard University in 2013, being the class of 2017. And initially went in thinking I wanted to do orthopedic surgery. I had a really bad knee injury my sophomore year of high school. I fractured my tibia, tore my ACL, all in the same injury, same knee. And that, I met my orthopedic surgeon who was African American, and he really he kind of became like almost like a father figure, really, because it was outside of him repairing my knee. He really checked on my mental and made sure that academically I was staying strong, and he really kind of inspired me to go into medicine initially. And so I went into medical school thinking I wanted to do orthopedic surgery. And then I realized, I don't necessarily like surgery. I do like orthopedics, the sports medicine, the musculoskeletal component behind it. But, sitting in the OR, or really standing in the OR for hours and hours, just didn't seem like the quality of life that was conducive to what, I saw for myself. And I'll never forget this day. I was playing in a Pro-Am league basketball game. And after the game, a couple of buddies and I went to stop to get some Gatorades on the way home. And I was coming out and I had my Howard University medical school sweatshirt on. And a guy stopped me and he was like, "Oh, I went to Howard Med. I do physiatry." And at first I had never heard of physiatry. I thought he said psychiatry. And he was like, "No, physiatry, PM&R. He's like, "When you get a chance, man, go home, look it up." And I kid you not, as soon as I got home, I Googled PM&R. And the first thing that came up was plenty money and relaxation is what that acronym stood for. And I started looking more into it and realized that a lot of the sports doctors that work with the professional teams were actually PM&R doctors. They have orthopedic surgeons that are affiliated with the organizations. If someone, needs intervention done secondary to an injury, but a lot of the people that were on the field doing the game coverage were actually physiatrists. And so at that time, I was like, this is perfect for me because I can do all the orthopedic type of stuff, but I don't have to worry about standing in an OR, 15 hours a day. And I switched track to PM&R. Also at that time, I did an internship through an organization called Nth Dimensions. And that was at Children's Hospital of Philly. And the mentor that I was paired with, he was an orthopedic surgeon, also African-American. And he was in the process of getting his executive MBA. And, I was trying to figure out why someone like him, who had all this money and was, a little older, was established, why he would want to go back to school. And he really, explained to me that medicine is a business. And he asked me, how can you be a great doctor if you don't understand business when medicine is a business? And I really, kind of took heed to that and started doing my research, looking it up, and found out that at Howard, we actually had an MD, MBA dual degree program that was a 5-year program. You could get your MD and your MBA in 5 years. And so when I got back from that internship that summer, went to my counselor and I said, "Hey, look, I think I want to enroll into the MBA program." At this time, I was going into my 3rd year of medical school. And basically what they did is I had to take the GMAT. And then I also had to do what you call a leave of absence. So I had to write a letter to the dean explaining to him why I wanted to do the MBA program and what my goals were, what I wanted to obtain from that extra degree. And they granted me the leave of absence. Probably the best decision I ever made, aside from focusing on medicine during undergrad, because it really opened up a lot of doors. And it also really expanded my network of people. And so I finished the MBA, and then I went back after that 1 year and finished med school and ended up matching into PM&R here at Mount Sinai. And I'm now in my 3rd year of residency. I'm going to be applying for a fellowship actually here pretty soon for interventional spine and sports medicine, which is kind of pain medicine, but there's, a lot of do game coverage. You get the sports medicine component, but you also get to do a lot of interventions. So a lot of peripheral joint injections, a lot of spinal procedures done under the fluoroscopy machine, a lot of ultrasound guided injections. So it's some pretty cool stuff, PRP injections, which is what Kobe Bryant was going to Germany years and years ago to get before it was even really, a hot topic. So you get to do a lot of cool things. And so that's what I'll be applying for fellowship. And then my goal is to open up my own practice and also be affiliated with a professional athletic team, preferably basketball.
Okay. Thank you for that brief rundown. It was very interesting that you talked about your career, your path, and some of the things that people could possibly consider hurdles. So with this being geared towards students in school, um, what was your mindset when it came to, you mentioned not really talking about study and kind of falling behind on GPA status? What was your mindset at that time in college that caused you to fall behind or not focus so much on studying versus the sports?
So my mindset was really, I had twin daughters, so I had to work. I had to bring in some type of income, and but I also wanted to continue to play basketball. I mean, that basketball was my first love. So that was something that, asking me to stop that, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. So my mindset was really trying to balance. How can I balance both of these things? Really, three of these things. Work, school, and basketball. And my mindset was also, I was a great student leading up to that point. So I felt like I could do it. Like high school, things came easy. Like I could look at something the night before, go in there and get 100 on the exam. Um, and it was kind of like that in undergrad as well. But it's just, I was kind of all over the place. My mindset wasn't in the right place. My priorities were there because, like I said, I was still trying to make sure I was working, helping out my family, make sure that I was going to school, and make sure that I was playing basketball because I was still on scholarship. So I had a responsibility there as well. And, I would say my mindset was really just trying to be Superman. And that kind of led to me going down the wrong path in regards to my grades.
It's interesting you bring up having twins at 19 in your first year of college. And you talked about family. Can you tell us about your support that you had from your family towards school, towards sports, and towards being an early father? Because a lot of times our family or somebody that's there to push us or support us is what's needed along the journey. Can you explain how that helped you along your journey?
Absolutely. So if it wasn't for my family, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys now. And they always say it takes a village, and that's exactly what it took. My family was always there helping me out financially, with my kids, helping me, if I needed someone to watch them while I studied or while I went to practice or work, they were always there. I mean, I never even had to ask them for anything. They would just always initiate that and always take the initiative to help me out. And they told me, they said, despite this, you're not going to quit. You're not going to quit. And seeing my mom was a single mom. She raised me and my sister by herself, and me seeing how hard she worked, that's really what gave me the fire that I have and the ambition that I had from an early age. I was always had the mindset of, I want to make sure I can retire my mom while she's still young and she can still enjoy a good quality of life. And, seeing how she worked, it was times where I wouldn't even see my mom for a couple of days because by the time she got home from work, I had to put my sister to sleep and I was asleep, and then I'd get up early. Either my mom would already be gone or I would be up so early headed to the gym to get shots up that she'd still be asleep and I wouldn't want to wake her. So, just seeing that really, I think that's really where the foundation came from. And even to this day, I have tremendous support from my family, something that I'm very blessed and grateful for.
One thing that stood out to me is you talked about the fire. I wanted to know about what turned the fire on for you when you were facing grades, difficulty with your grades, and you want this passion for basketball, but then you get injured, and now you're interested in sports medicine. What was it that turned for you that made you say, "Wow, I got to get my grades up because this is more intriguing than your dream of being a basketball player, or continuing the path of sports"?
I think for me, it was I always had these aspirations of having this, certain type of lifestyle. Like I mentioned, retiring my mom, us, having a big nice house and having money and just being having unlimited opportunities and resources and being able to provide that for my family. And I realized that I could, even if I got a contract to play professional basketball overseas, NBA or wherever, you're one injury away from your life changing completely. And I think that fire really came from me seeing that happen, like I mentioned to one of my really good friends. and seeing how it affected him. And he didn't even have children. He was single without kids. So, seeing that, I realized, like, and then everything else that was going on, with um, my grades, and then having a red shirt, like, it was all these obstacles that, sometimes we try to fight signs that God gives us, or signs that are right in front of us. We try to fight them and create our own journey and our own path. And I just realized, like, there were so many things happening that I had to something had to change. I couldn't want change but not change what I was doing. And I think that, getting that call from my buddy was definitely one of the things that put a lot of fire under me, because I was like, I can't afford for that to happen. I have two other people that's dependent on me, so I have to make sure and that was the hardest decision that I had. That's the biggest sacrifice that I've ever had to make, was quitting basketball, to focus on school. Like, that's not something that people could have, convinced me I would have been doing. But yeah, I would say, to answer your question, that fire really came from that phone call from him, all the obstacles that I was facing, realizing that, I had to make a move that was going to set things up for later on. And then also, just seeing how hard my mom continued to work, and all that support that she gave me, for me to get to college and then just throw that away was not an option.
So you talk about the goal that you have to retire your mother, to now you want to be you want to get to sports medicine, you want this career that wasn't originally on your radar. So we have kids here that are currently in school and they want to go towards this path.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of your plan that you put together, how realistic was it at the time that you can actually execute all these things on your plan as they are trying to build their game plan towards their success in medicine?
Good question. So for me, I felt like I could do anything I put my mind to. So anything that I wrote down on that 7-year plan, I felt like I could accomplish it. But there's two words that one of my mentors told me: delay gratification. Now, if you can't do that, then those things that you write on that list are going to be a lot harder to accomplish. So for me, I knew that I could accomplish those things if I made sacrifices, meaning all the parties, going to hanging out and all that. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that, because while people were hanging out and, I needed to be at work working. And then in my free time, I needed to be studying. Now I didn't have that obligation of having to go to practice and having to go to workouts and having to travel with the team. So I felt like me having that extra time, I should be able to manage the workload. Now I knew it was going to be tough, but like I said, I feel like you have to first believe in yourself before anybody else will. And basketball really gave me that confidence that, if you put the work in, you'll get the results. But I'll tell everybody listen to this call, that's not always the case. It's not always the hard work that you put in doesn't always equate to those same results. For instance, you could study your butt off for an exam and still not get the score that you expected. But you have to, and I was always taught, you work hard, you get results. That's not necessarily true. And I feel like once I saw that wasn't true, it made those things even more realistic, because that disappointment wasn't there if I fell short. I just had to make sure that I was putting in all the effort that I had. If I could do that, then I knew I could go to sleep at night and sleep well. But I was also confident in myself, and that came from basketball, because like I said, it was times I had the high school keys to our gym. Like, I'll be the first one there before janitors getting shots up. So I always felt like you shouldn't be able to guard me because I work harder than you. It wasn't a cocky or an arrogant feeling that I had. It was just, I felt like I worked that much harder than everybody. So when we get on this court, there ain't nothing you can do with me, because I put the work in. And that carried over to school, because it got to a point where I was the first one in the library. I'll never forget, at Bowie State in the biology department, there's this huge table as soon as you walk into the front door. And I would come in there, I would have my laptop out, have all my books out. I would be there studying, some class didn't start till 8:39. I was there a couple hours before every day consistently, and I would be the only one there. And then I started seeing I'd get there maybe a little late, 30 minutes later, so somebody's sitting there. Next thing I know, people are starting to come kind of migrate in that area hours before class. So not only that, I started seeing that I was also having an influence on other people. And to this day, two of those people that, were some of the first ones to join me there early before class, one of them ended up going to dental school at Howard. The other one ended up going to pharmacy school at Howard, and we were all roommates. Now one's a pharmacist and one's a dentist, so it just shows like if you're willing to put the work in, you'll get the results. It may not always be the results that you want, but that means you just got to go back to the drawing board and figure out a plan and go even harder.
So the one thing that I was in school and I also was an athlete. I played for City College. My first year of college, it seemed very smooth, but the second year when the work ramped up, it just seemed difficult to manage. I wasn't the smartest kid or the person that had the best grades in high school, so it just seemed like when the pressure is on, it's hard to respond. Since you've gone through the course of studying for medical school, what advice could you give to the kids on the call now that when it gets difficult, when it seems like that the goal is unreachable, what gear can they shift into, or what advice would you give them that they can use along their journey?
So I would say one thing that's very important is making sure that you have mentors, making sure that you not only have mentors, but you also build a rapport with your teachers, with the staff, because those are going to be the people that help you. Whenever you start hitting that wall, you need to have someone that you can reach out to that can help you kind of redirect. And mentor, meaning it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that's older than you. I have mentors that are younger than me. It's just that their path was a lot straighter than mine, so they got to those points before I did. But it's good to have someone on different levels that you can reach out to and figure out where you're going wrong. And that's easier when you have a rapport built with your professors. I would say that would be the first advice that I would give you. On day one, go to your professor's class and say, hey, look, I'm very serious about my education. These are my aspirations. I want to do pre-med or pre-dental, whatever it is that you want to do, and let them know, to push me, but also, let me know if there's resources, if there's internships, anything any opportunity that you feel like could help me, please let me know. I would go to my professors day one and do that. And let's believe, whenever there were opportunities and things like that, they would always come to me because they knew that I was serious. And you're a representation of your institution. So they're not going to send somebody somewhere that's not serious about things, because that's going to be a bad look on that institution and could potentially affect, relationships and opportunities that institution may have in the future. So you have to really show that, you're serious about your education, and you can't expect for other people to be serious about your education. You have to take that initiative for yourself. And when others see that, they're going to be more likely to help you. And I think that trust me, when I was studying for the MCAT and even studying for, board exams in med school, I hit that brick wall where I was like, man, I don't know, this is looking a little shaky, but I always had a mentor that I could call and help me kind of redirect myself, that could provide me with a resource or, somewhere that I could go to get more insight and get more help on what it was that was giving me trouble.
Okay. And then one more question before I go to the question in the chat. You spoke about how important it is to build a rapport with the teachers. As a student athlete, how important is it to, I'll give you a scenario, because hopefully everybody's played on a team and had the grace to manage that's on the call that would understand it. You have your coach saying practice when game practice. You don't really have a mentor or a connection with a professor. As an individual, how do you overcome feeling that the world is against you and you have no allies? How would you answer that question?
World is against you and no allies.
Hmm.
So it really comes from you, right? I'm a firm believer that no one owes me anything. So at the end of the day, my professors don't have, all they have to do is teach the curriculum that they're responsible to teach me. They don't have to do anything technically other than that to help me. So I think that you have to have that foundation and that core within yourself that whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. But realize that sometimes that might be you doing something on your own, but you also have to realize that you shouldn't have to do things on your own, but it's going to be times where you just have to sit down and get it done. It comes down to how bad you want it. And, sometimes people say, oh, and I saw this a lot, especially going to Bowie State, um, and any HBC really that I've had experience with, people will start out, oh, I want to be pre-med, I'm pre-med, I'm pre-farm, I'm going to do this, do that. But after time, you start seeing people get just kind of weed themselves out bit by bit by bit. You really end up seeing who was serious about it. So to answer your question, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, how bad do I really want this? Why am I doing this? I can give you a reason why I want to do medicine, right? But some people may want to do medicine just because their friends doing it with the med school, or because their dad or mom went to med school, but that may not necessarily be their dream. So you have to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. And I feel like if you're doing it for the right reasons, whenever you hit those times where you're in a brick wall and you feel like you're by yourself, you have that foundation knowing this is something that I want to do. So I got to find out how I'm gonna get it done.
Okay, thank you. I want to know from the question in the chat, how did you articulate that rough patch of GPA-Wise to admissions committees?
Okay. So, I explained that to them. I told them, here's the thing, before I even answer that question, what you want to show is progression. The worst thing you can do is have really good grades and then they drop, right? If you have grades, so you don't want to go backwards. So for me, I went from the 2.0 to I ended up graduating with a 3.7. So that alone, I didn't have to say much. They can look at that and say, wow, you overcame that. That's what people want to see. They don't want to see that you started out with a 4.0, but then you hit your senior year and you finished with a 3.5. Like, yeah, that's still a good GPA, but why did you regress? You know what I mean? So I really tried to speak to, this is the progression. I hit a rough patch, which is what everyone does in life at some point. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone falls down. But to pick yourself up and to get through that shows a lot of character. And I really used that to my advantage when I wrote my personal statement. I really showed that, I was trying to multitask, being a father, being an athlete, being a student, and balance all these things. And I fell down trying to do all those things. But I was able to make a sacrifice, get myself up, and execute it. So the important thing is articulating yourself. That was the perfect word to use in that question, because you have to be able to articulate that through words in your personal statement to get yourself a chance to get that interview where you can sit in front of that person and they can really see it in your eyes that this person is serious. But, oftentimes there's so many things that we want to say on our personal statements. That's the first thing that they're going to see before they see you. They'll see a picture of you, but they're going to read that personal statement first. So you have to be able to articulate those shortcomings and show how you were able to overcome that on paper so that you can get the chance to do that in person.
That was a great answer. I want to open up the floor to anybody that has a question, especially the students.
I think it was something else. It said discouraged by bad grade, MCAT score. But
She said, what would you highlight as most important? But I think you answered that.
Yeah, and but it's balanced, because I'll tell you this, right? And that's one thing I wanted to mention too, because it's more than just having good grades. Being a doctor is more than just, or being successful in anything is more than just knowing the content and the material and being competent. You also have to be a people person. You also have to be able to make people feel comfortable. There's doctors that know everything, but if they can't communicate with their patients, that patient's not going to be compliant and that patient's not going to do well. They're not going to have a good prognosis. So nowadays there's less, I feel like there's less emphasis on grades per se and more emphasis on what else are you bringing to the table. Because at the end of the day, you have to do things that are going to separate you from the next person on paper so that you can get a chance to sit in front of somebody and explain to them why you should be there, right? And so you can't do that by just having good grades, because a lot of people applying to med school are going to have good grades, but what else are they doing? What are they doing that can make a difference? Are you volunteering? Are you doing research? What organizations are you in? Are you in any leadership positions? Have you started any organizations? What type of innovative things have you done? So the focus, yes, should be on grades, but you have to make sure that you can check all those other boxes too, because that's going to be what separates you. When you get to a certain point, that's just like with basketball. High school, you could go out there and run laps around a lot of those people just because you were more athletic. But once you get to college and professional, everybody can play. But what's the difference now? Who's working the hardest? Who's taking care of their body the right way? Who's eating right? Those small, those small factors, the intangibles are going to be the things that matter when it comes down to it. And I think that as you prepare your CV and your resume and you prepare to apply for these, whether it's med school or whatever it is, always think to yourself, why would they take me and not this person? You have to be able to answer that question and also articulate the answer to that question, on paper.
It's funny that you say that because as we're talking sports and you're saying check the other boxes, I'm thinking the more valuable in fantasy sports is the person that pads the stats. They become more valuable. Yep. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. Yep. I want to go to the next question in the chat that Justin posted. He said, do you think the culture at Howard Medical School prepared you for what you are experiencing in medicine today, considering the ethnic breakdown of students at HBCUs does not represent that of the medical field? Do you think people see you and judge you first as an African-American male physician or as simply opposed to looking past your race? If so, how do you deal with that day to day?
That's a great question. So yeah, I feel like Howard prepared me for any and everything. Like I wouldn't have traded that experience for anything. But you're right. It is what it is. There's not a lot of us in medicine, which is part of the reason why I'm here, is try to use this platform to increase the amount of diversity that we have in medicine. And yes, some patients are going to just see you as, an African-American. You have to look past that by making sure you bring your A game every single day. And I tell all my mentees this, it's unfortunate, but being a minority, you're behind the 8 ball. That's just the way the world is set up. But you can do two things. You can say, okay, I'm at a disadvantage. You feel sorry for yourself and make excuses, or you can try to use that disadvantage to your advantage, which is what I did. So I knew that there's not a lot of people that look like me that are going to be applying for these positions in these internships and these professional schools, right? So the playing field is not that large. That's an advantage right there. Also, you have to look at all these programs that are out there. Even starting in high school, there's internships that will give you a stipend, to go somewhere, travel for a summer and do an internship. Now you can put that on your resume. You got paid to be there. And those programs are only for minorities, so a Caucasian student wouldn't even be able to apply for that. So we actually have opportunities that are out there that we don't even know about. Like I didn't know that in high school I could have went to USC to do an internship and study plants, medicinal plants for a summer. I didn't know I could go to the Dominican Republic for free and actually get a stipend and get paid to be there and also be able to put that on my resume. I wasn't aware of any of those things. But the opportunities are there to allow you to be able to use the color of your skin, a disadvantage to an advantage. And I think that that's what you have to try to focus on. You can't focus on people not looking past your race. If they look at your race, that's fine, but just make sure that you have the competence, to be able to be in that room, and also have that, for me, I try to make the patient feel comfortable first, so that, they like talking to me. It doesn't matter if I'm black or white. They enjoy talking to me. And then when they see that you have the competence to match that, then they trust you. That's when the patient physician trust relationship is really optimized, but you have to go into it knowing, hey, look, I know I'm at a disadvantage, and that's fine. And by me knowing that, it forces you to be on your A game at all times. I know I got to be a step above him to get this spot because I'm African American. And that's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it is what it is, right? If that's not something that you can change right then and there, then you have to figure out a way to overcome that. And for me, I always felt like I got to go above and beyond because I'm already behind the eight ball. It's already not a fair playing field. So I got to go above and beyond. But what that did is it just created that. Now that's routine. Anything I do, I try to go above and beyond, just because I had that foundation and that core from jump. I knew that's what I was faced against. It's just going to make you a better person, make you stronger, make you be able to persevere and get through things that the other person wouldn't be able to get through because, they don't have to.
I want to ask one of the students to come off mute and ask a live question versus me read them out in the chat. Let's hear your voices. Let's get the engagement going.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So I had a question about how did you go about getting clinical experience throughout college? I know you touched on how you got research experience through internships, but how did you focus on the clinical experience itself?
Great question. I'm glad you asked that too, because that's one thing I was going to mention. So remember I said you have to be the one that takes control of your education, and whatever you feel like you need for yourself, you have to go get it. You can't expect for it to fall in your lap or for someone to give it to you, right? So say for instance, you wanted to be an OB-GYN, or you thought you might want to be an OB-GYN. You can easily go on Google and Google OB-GYNs in my area, or even African-American OB-GYNs in my area, and, give them a call, say, hey, look, my name's Gabrielle. I'm interested in medicine, potentially OB-GYN. I'd like to come and shadow you. That's what I did. I literally went to people's offices and said, hey, look, I'd like to shadow you for a day so I can see exactly what it is that you do to try to figure out if this is something that I want for myself. So I think with clinical experience early on, that's how I did it. I was shadowing. I also tried to take jobs that, would give me some exposure to somewhat clinical. Like I was mentioning, being like a pharmacy tech. When I applied for internships, I tried to make sure that there was some type of clinical component that was in that as well. But I spent a lot of time during the summers shadowing as well. I remember shadowing a physician up in Bowie that was in family medicine, and she would actually let me go and see the patients first, just ask a history and, see what the chief complaint was. And then she let me come back and report to her, so what you have to realize is that there's a lot of people out there that are willing to help you, but you got to show them that you're serious, and you have to take that initiative to reach out to them. So if there's something that you're interested in doing from a clinical standpoint, then I would encourage you to try to find a physician or, anyone within that discipline that you're interested in, and tell them what you want. You got to tell them exactly what you want. Hey, look, I'd like to come shadow you, if that's okay. Or, I'd like to sit in on a couple of your cases in the OR, if that's okay. They'll make it happen.
And I want to encourage everybody that the worst thing people could tell you is no. But if you
Right.
don't ask, it's an automatic no. So always ask until you get that no.
Yep. But you got to initiate that though.
Does
I remember
anybody else?
making a list of like all of the Black orthopedic surgeons that were located in Bowie, and reaching out to them, calling the office, trying to get their email addresses and stuff. Like, these were things that would be on my to-do list. And that's another thing I want to encourage everyone to do. You have to visualize what your goals are daily. Every morning when I wake up, I have a big whiteboard, dry erase board in my room, and I write my to-do list for that day. and what I want to accomplish. I have like my short-term goals and my long-term goals that are on there, and they stay there. And I think it's important that you do that because, for one, it'll keep you from getting overwhelmed with so much things that you have going on, but you're also able to see exactly what it is that you want to do. And as you do those things, you're able to check those boxes off, and that itself builds confidence and encourages you to move to the next thing and check that off. But you got to really write down the things that you want so that you can see it and visualize it.
Great answer.
A question. Is it okay if I ask a question real
Yes.
quick?
Hmm.
Yeah. So you talked briefly about the personal statement and how you were able to get your voice across to those who are probably going to read your personal statement. I just wanted to know if you had any advice for people who are applying to medical school and have, I would say, a hard time forming a sort of uniqueness or forming a sort of DNA to who they are, and allowing the reader to understand that.
That's a good question too. So, and the most important part is getting insight and input from multiple different people for your personal statement. I think that's important. But you have to remember, I said it earlier, you have to ask that question: why me and not this person? Once you answer that question and you write it down, now you have to figure out a way to articulate that through your personal statement, because they only give you but so many words. So you have to think about things that are unique to you. Also, reach out to people that have already matriculated through medical school and ask, what are the admission committees looking for? What are they looking for in the people that they admit to their schools? So one thing I'll say that's big is leadership. You know, to be a great doctor or a great businessman or anything, you need to be a good leader. You need to be a good listener. So if you think about what types of things, what qualities and traits do I have that make me a good leader? How have I exhibited that throughout my, academic career thus far? I think that's a good place to start because, places want to see, like, medicine is changing. The world is changing. And so you have to show that you can adapt to that. You have to show that you can be someone that can be on those front lines and be a good leader. And I think that's what a lot of these institutions are looking for. Not just people that are competent and they know the material, but also someone that can encourage others and influence others and uplift others and be a leader to other people and be innovative and bring ideas into the program and programs into an organization that weren't there before, that can create change. That I think that's what you have to try to articulate in your personal statement, is how can you do those things? Because that's what's going to separate you. Everybody's going to have good grades for the most part. Everyone's going to have a decent MCAT score. Everyone's going to have a decent GPA. Everyone's probably going to have a little shadowing experience. So you have to think, okay, what are the things that make me unique to the next person?
So Dr. Bowles, following up on that, given that you played basketball, can you talk about how teamwork and being on a team translates into being effective in medicine?
Definitely. And that's also a good point. So even today, I can give you an example today. Not everyone, you can't expect for everyone to think and operate the way that you do, right? You can't expect for people to react to a situation the way that you would react to it. And I feel like in basketball, I was the point guard. So I was the captain, I was the person that was leading everyone, And so same thing in medicine. When you're the physician, you're going to be working with nurses, you're going to be working with respiratory therapists, occupational therapists, you're going to be working with administrators, all types of people. You have to be able to understand that everyone's different. And I feel like with basketball, there were so many different personalities, so many different types of egos, and that being able to put all that to a side and treat everyone at the way that I would want to be treated, I think is something that I was able to take from basketball and carry to now. Because now my demeanor when I'm dealing with everyone is I'm very like just calm and collected, and it all stems from basketball. I remember I had one attending ask me, like, I had a patient when I was on 24-hour call and they triggered sepsis. We were trying to figure out what was going on. And I was just so, I wasn't worried. And I remember him asking, he said, well, you don't seem worried. How are you so calm right now? And it reminds me of all those times when you're down by 1 point or down by 2 points with a couple of seconds to go, and you trust the people that are around you. I think that's a big word too. You have to be able to trust the people that you work with, and they have to be able to trust you. And I think that that's also something that translates, from sports. Being in a team, you all have to trust each other. It's like we're all going to war together with the same end goal. And it's the same thing in medicine. The end goal is for good patient outcomes and good quality of care, right? So we all have the same goal here. And so being able to let everyone know that you feel that way, I think also translated from basketball, because we all had the same goal. We all wanted to win. Some people may have wanted to win, but they may have also wanted to, score the most points or get MVP, and that's the same thing that you see in medicine sometimes. There's always going to be egos, but I think basketball taught me how to really put all that to the side and get everyone to come together so that we can be a cohesive unit towards the same goal that we all have.
I want to go to Gabrielle, who has a hand raised.
Yes, sorry. So I have another question to ask. So I guess, how did you specifically go about networking and making more connections outside of professors? And also, considering you went to HBCU for medical school, were you ever considering like pledging to a Divine Nine just to have that broader network and support system?
I didn't really consider that. One thing that I will say with the networking, so there's a lot of medical conferences out there. You have NMA, you have any specialty has their own conference that students are able to go to, medical students, residents, fellows, attendings. So I would go to these conferences. Whenever I would go do research or have these like internships, I would always apply, to a conference. I remember I went to ABCRMS after I did the Dominican Republic internship, which was a biomedical national conference for minorities that they had every year, because they have what's called an abstract, where you can create a poster and you submit it to them. If it gets accepted, you get to go to the conference and they'll hang your poster up. And as people walk up to it, you present it, the information on the poster. So I started going to these conferences, and, and I'll tell you this too, you have to look at yourself as a brand, even starting now. Be careful what you post on social media, be careful how you carry yourself. As a sophomore in undergrad, I already had business cards made. They just had my name on there, email address, my phone number, my institution's logo, Bowie State at the top. Wasn't a lot, because I hadn't accomplished much to have on a card, but that was a way when I went to these conferences and went to those open houses that I mentioned, I would meet these people and I was exchanging cards with them. And so that right there let them know that I was serious, because no one else, that was a student there was doing that. So that goes back to what I was saying earlier, finding out ways to separate yourself and show that you're really serious about your education and the goals that you want. But I would start there. I would, look into different national conferences that they have. If you're interested in medicine, then obviously you would, look at medical conferences that are out there, and you go to those. And you also go to your like the dean of if you're in biology department, go to the dean of the biology department or dean of whatever department you're interested in as a discipline, and ask them, what conferences can we apply to? Because sometimes they have resources out there that you may not even know about, but unless you ask, you'll never find out. So I would start there. Going to these conferences, you're meeting people from all over the country. And so it comes down to, fortunately and unfortunately, it sometimes comes down to who you know and who they know, and that's worked in my favor. And I'm sure it's worked, against me sometimes too. But at the end of the day, you have to put yourself out there and you have to network. And the best way to do that is by going to different conferences that they have. And these conferences are held all over. Things are a little different now because of the COVID. So it's more of a virtual platform for a lot of these conferences. But even like what you're doing right now is a form of networking. You know, before tonight, I didn't know you. And now, you know, we've had a chance to meet. So something that you're interested in, say you're interested in a certain type of medicine, I'm sure I know somebody that's interested in that. I can pass your name to them. Now you have a connection with them. And that just continues and continues. So what you're doing right now is a start, is perfect. What you're doing right now is a form of networking. So you just want to continue that. You know, whenever you meet someone that you feel like, you know, this is someone that, you know, could be a good resource. You got to go up to them, look them in the eye, extend your hand, handshake. Well, now it's COVID, so you probably got to give them like a little elbow pound or something, but, you know, introduce yourself and let them know what you're interested in. Let them know what you want.
Thank you for that. Is there any other questions?
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? If not, I will throw one. You earlier, Dr. Miller, talked about teamwork, and one of the things that I learned a lot, not only from playing sports but also from having these game plan meetings, is there's a bunch of plays you can run to be successful in life. But a lot of times, there's one play that everybody runs. For example, there's a motion play that everybody runs when you're playing a man-to-man in basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But when people go zone, you got to switch up the plan. So with that ideology in place, do you think it's wise for somebody just to have a game plan A to execute, or do you think it's wise to have multiple options just in case? And with that being asked, how did you find your area of interest in all of the fields of science and medicine?
So you always want to have a plan B, but that doesn't mean you focus on your plan B. You have your plan B there, you know, in the back of your mind, written down somewhere. It's there, but I'm not necessarily planning to have to go to that plan B. And that's how I operate even now, right? If the interventional spine and sports fellowship for some reason doesn't work out, I already know what I want to go into next, but I'm not really putting a lot of energy into that. I'm putting my energy into getting into that fellowship. So you definitely want to have a plan B and even a plan C. You know, you always want to have a fallback plan. But, you know, you want to make sure that, because sometimes some people are more focused on the fallback plan than they are on the primary goal. You know, I had a mentee that called me a couple of weeks ago and was telling me, you know, he's trying to get into med school, but he was thinking about going the post-bac route, and he had looked up all these post-bacs, and I'm like, man, you've done more due diligence towards the post-bacs than you have towards getting into med school. It's like you're already thinking that you're already planning to not get in, and, you know, so, and that's where your energy goes, and you don't want that, but you definitely want to have a plan B, even a plan C at times, but make sure that you're putting your energy into your plan A.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, so Dr. Bowles, can you talk to the students a little bit about medical school? So, you know, students are applying, but oftentimes they don't really realize what medical school is all about and how the residency works out. And you're a PGY3. Tell them what a PGY means.
So PGY just means postgraduate year. So that's the year that you're in after medical school. My program specifically is 4 years. So I have one more to go. And medical school, you know, most medical schools are pretty much 4 years. And then after that, you apply to a residency program. You go through the match where you will apply and interview at all of these different programs. And then you have to rank those programs, you know, according to how bad you want to go there. And then all that goes into this big computer system. And the places that you interviewed at also rank the candidates the same way that you rank the programs. And then this computer matches you up. So for instance, say Mount Sinai, I ranked number 1, and they take 4 residents a year, right? Just say arbitrary number 4. Say they take 4 residents a year, and I rank them number 1. If they rank me in their top 4, that computer matches me with Mount Sinai. If it doesn't, but say my number 2 place that I rank has me in their top 4, it matches me there. And so you go into the match, and then that determines where you'll be going for residency. And then after residency, you can elect to apply for what's called a fellowship, which is essentially just, you know, an opportunity for you to get more specialized training. So for instance, say you went into residency as an internal medicine doctor, but you wanted to be a cardiologist. You would have to apply for a cardiology fellowship after residency. And then after fellowship, you become an attending. So you're at that point, you pretty much have the, you know, you're the boss pretty much. Like my attendings are who I answer to. They're who, you know, finalize the plans for our patients.
Thank you.
So that's kind of how that works, you know. And during medical school, you'll have 3 board exams that you'll have to take. One is step 1, which historically has forced a lot of people to change career paths because they hold so much weight on that one exam, and different specialties expect for you to score a certain score on that exam in order to be considered competitive. So for instance, if you want to do orthopedic surgery or plastic surgery or, you know, something like that, you need to have a really, really high step 1 board score. And it sucks because, you know, you take step 1 after your 2nd year of med school. That's before you even start clinical. So you could have someone that's just a good test taker and do really, really well and still be in the ball game, you know, for some of these specialties that require high scores. And then you may have someone they're very competent, they're very sharp, but just they may have had a bad day. They may not be that best of a test taker. Like I'm not that great of a test taker. I overthink things. If something is too easy for me, I'm like, nah, it's got to be a trick. This question's a trick. And I'll sometimes change the right answer to the wrong answer just because of the way that I think sometimes, you know. And someone like that may not do as well in that exam. And now you've already ruined your chances of, or I won't say ruined, but you've already dug a really, really deep hole for yourself in regards to trying to get into a residency that requires you to have a high step 1 score. Now they're probably going to change that to a pass fail, you know, which will be good. But I had a lot of classmates that wanted to do dermatology or orthopedics. And, you know, after that step 1 board exam, they passed, but it wasn't that high of a score. They completely switched what they wanted to do. And so, you know, you have that exam, and then before you go into residency, you'll take 2 more board exams. One is a written exam, multiple choice, and then the other one is an oral exam where you go into, like, basically you have patients that are paid to pretend to have issues wrong with them. And you have, I think it's like 7 or 8 cases, and in each room you go in and, you know, you have to ask all the questions to the patient, do a physical exam, try to figure out what's going on. Then you come outside the room and you have to type up a progress note for that patient. And so they grade, that's a board exam as well. And then, you know, if you pass all of those, you're eligible to apply for residency. And once you get into residency, you will take another board exam once you graduate residency so that you can become board certified in whatever specialty it is that you applied for.
One of the questions in the chat is step 1 pass or fail now?
I know there's a lot of talk of making it pass fail. I don't know if that's been finalized, but it's something that I would suspect will definitely be finalized in the next year or 2, if it's not already.
So Kimberly, you're at AAMC. Kimberly, can you opine on that?
Yeah, I believe that's already been pushed through to pass fail.
Thank you.
It is pass fail now?
Yes.
Oh, nice. So see, that's definitely an advantage. Definitely an advantage.
I have a question. That's okay to ask.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you got your MBA after your 3rd year, but prior to that, like, what did you do to kind of like bolster your, I guess, resume or application once you got into medical school, to show residency that you're kind of, you know, still trying to do different activities and progress?
That's a good question too. So the first thing I did, there was a there was a family medicine doctor who you can actually get into sports medicine via family medicine. And that was his track. He worked with the football team, him and an orthopedic surgeon named Dr. Thompson. And so I went to them and I asked, could I do some game coverage with you? So I was going to the football games, working with the football team, taping, doing things like that. If there were injuries during the game, I would get to go out on the field with the orthopedic surgeon and with the primary care doctor. And, I was doing that really as a first year, I believe that's when I started doing that. So I already had game coverage, under my belt as a first year medical student. But again, that was me saying, okay, I know I want to do sports medicine. They weren't going to come to me and say, hey man, you want to come shadow us on the field? That was something I had to find out who were the team doctors for the team and reach out to them and let them know what I was interested in and what I wanted. And that's how that opportunity came about. So that was one thing that I was doing. Another thing, I wanted to make sure that I was having some leadership roles, so there were some organizations on campus. I got involved with the orthopedic surgery organization, starting out as a member. And then that following year, I actually had like a secretary role. So that was more of a leadership role. And I was also volunteering with this sports, it's called Keen Sports, Keen. So organization that works with kids with disabilities, but it pairs sports with it, so every other weekend I would go, they would have either football or softball, basketball. I'd go and you pretty much just play with the kids, for an hour or so. And that, that really, things like that go a long way because they really keep you from just taking life for granted. There's so many people that are less fortunate than us. And just when you think things are going, so bad or so wrong for you, there's someone that's going through so much more. And me going and working with those kids and just seeing how happy they were, I was like, I dare myself be out here frowning and upset because, I got a B on an exam or I didn't get accepted into the honor society when, this kid is just, happy that I was able to come here and shoot hoops with him. So, those type of experiences will humble you, but those were some of the things that I did early on, hitting the ground running. And then fast forward to residency, I came into this residency knowing, hey, I want to do sports. I want to have leadership roles. I want to learn more about health administration, more about leadership. And so I saw that there was an email for this leadership development cohort that they had that was 1 year long. And so I applied to that. I got to Mount Sinai in July. By August, I was already accepted into that 1 year program, which I completed last year. All the committees related to diversity and stuff at the organization, I applied to sit on those committees. So I just got involved. You want to get involved. You want to, some people go into things with the mindset of, okay, let me just focus on my grades. And then, a couple years, once I'm comfortable, then I'll start getting more involved in extracurricular stuff. But I don't think that's the way to go because things are never going to really slow down to the point where you're like not busy. So, I encourage you to get involved early, find time to get involved early because if you get involved early, you can build those relationships with those people early, build that rapport. And then when you put it on your CV and resume, it's something that you've been doing for years. It's not just something, because your CV, you can see people that just waited to like, the last year and then just try to pile on all these things. But, it means more when you have something that you've actually been involved in over the course of time. So I would encourage that. What your interests are, get involved with those things early on.
Francis, you have a question?
Not a question so much as to the young people, other young people on this call. Notice in listening to the doctor talk, you'll notice that he always pushed the envelope. He never waited for an opportunity to come necessarily to him or somebody to come to him. He was always looking for additional opportunities and thinking outside the box. If you sit and wait for the phone to ring, it probably never will. And as a fellow Bison, go Bison.
Hey, my man, my man. Same thing. And Dr. Miller, you can attest to that. The same, like I saw that they sent an email about the swag initiative, and the email just asked for us to, fill out some information about our demographics and what our background was. But I took that a step further, and I actually sent an email, believe it was to Mr. Smalls, or I think it
was to me.
And to Miss Wallace too. And I said, hey, look, I'd like to set up a meeting to sit down with Dr. Miller and speak more, about how I can get involved and help out with this initiative. So that's just another example. You have to take the initiative. You have to take control of your education and your career path. And the things that you want, you write them down, and then you start figuring out the way, you write out the ways to get to that and the people that can help you. And you have to reach out to those people. And I guarantee you, people are going to help you, especially when you reach out. I mean, I love hearing people, say, oh, I have a question about getting into med school, or a question of, oh, why'd you do your MBA? People like to help other people out, especially minorities, because we need more of us. That's what we need. So it's our responsibility to reach back and help other people. And so people that are already in those positions of power, they have that, most of them have that same mindset, so, and like you said, like Mr. Small said, the worst thing you can hear is no. And then you just go to the next person and ask them. All you need to hear a lot of times is one person say yes. Same thing with getting into med school. More schools are going to say no than they're going to say yes, more than likely, statistically. But all you need is one school to say yes, right? So there's some people that will only apply to like 2 or 3 schools because they feel like they're not competitive enough, but you lose out on that opportunity to get into that school. Those schools that, you think they may not accept you because your GPA wasn't as high or your MCAT wasn't as high. It might be something on your resume or CV that stands out that they like, but you never gave yourself that chance because you didn't apply. So I would say, apply realistically. If the school's telling you that their minimum cutoff for GPA is a 3.5 and you don't have a 3.5, then don't apply there. That's a waste of money because you didn't meet that minimum requirement that they're telling you that they have. But if you say their minimum requirement is a 3.5 and you only have a 3.6 and you're like, oh man, apply. If that's a school you want to go to, apply because you meet the requirement. Now you just have to try to find other things on your CV or resume that are going to stand out. And that's why you really have to start early. As soon as you start and you get to an institution, you want to start getting involved early so that you have time to build up your CV and your resume.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from anybody?
I have one more question.
Yes.
So especially with COVID now, I think it's kind of hard to get clinical experience and find hospitals that are taking volunteers. So I was trying to take the route of just like emailing doctors, but it's hard to find like the direct, like find a doctor's like direct contact, like their email. And like I tried like looking on like LinkedIn too, but I just can never find like their contact information, not like the general hospital's like phone number. So like how'd you go about like reaching out to someone like and just finding their email?
So and a lot of times what I would do is I would use one of my resources for that. So like, for instance, now I'm a resource of yours, right? So say you're interested in something, then I could reach out to that person for you or provide you with their direct information. So like, that's one thing that I was able to take advantage of by going to those open houses, was getting direct contact with the students. Because then the students that are already in that institution that I'm interested in, they already had that direct access. So I could use them as a way to get, to those administrators or get to those attendings that I really wanted to shadow. But you're right, COVID has really changed the dynamic of a lot of things. And I think that moving forward, programs like this are going to be, like Swag Initiative are going to be even more important because now it comes down even more to who you know. Because you lose that luxury of being able to just kind of pull up on people, and say, hey, I'm interested. My name's this. I want to do this. That's really changed now. And I don't know how long it's going to be changed for, but you have to find ways to adjust to that and adapt. And that's going to make, things like this even more important. So, and I'll make sure I leave my email address and stuff. So you guys can always feel free to reach out to me. We can talk more offline and I'll help you out in any way that I can.
Yeah, I had another question for you.
Go ahead.
That's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I was curious, kind of just being like an African American, usually kind of the only one, I guess speaking for myself and probably for you, the only one kind of in the medical field or in medical school, not seeing someone that always looks like you. How do you navigate that? And have you ever felt as if like being an African American has played a role in positively in your professional career and negatively, and how have you been able to navigate that as well?
I think so. It's funny you say that, because even today when I was walking to the cafeteria, I actually saw a Black physician here at Mount Sinai, and I like rarely see that. Like he was like in the white coat, that the tie on. I was like, I don't really see a lot of that. And coming from Howard, you see that all day, every day. And so I look at not seeing it as often here as an opportunity. I don't really look at it as something that affects me negatively, because it's like, I'm here. So now there's not a lot of us here. I'm here. And I had the opportunity to make a good impression so that when you apply here, they remember that I was here and all the things that I was able to do and bring to the table. Now they're gonna take you because of what the person that came before you was able to do. So me not seeing a lot of people that look like me is even more responsibility for me to go even harder, because I know that I'm here and I have the opportunity to help you get here. But if I mess up, I'm ruining your chances. So I can't mess up. I gotta go hard, right? So that's an example of me taking something that someone else may look at as a disadvantage or something negative and turning that into a positive and turning that into fuel for me to just go harder. And so I'm sure it's probably affected me negatively, without me really knowing it, maybe subconsciously, because, being at Howard, I was telling someone a couple of days ago, the culture was just so embracing and it felt like family. Like even my attendings, like I would just want to be around them. Like we would just talk about just real stuff. Like that didn't even have anything to do with medicine. And now here I have attendings that I try to hide from because their communication, they don't know how to interact. They're not very engaging. It's a different dynamic here. And having come from Howard, your expectations are at a certain level. And then when you come somewhere like this, everyone's sharp, but you don't see a lot of people that look like you, but like I said, I look at that as an opportunity and also as a responsibility.
So does anybody have one last question as we start to dwindle down? Okay, so if nobody has any other questions, I want to point out that in the chat, we have messages from Ms. Marcia Jackson and Kimberly Bellamy, just informing you that there are summer programs at both of the institutions, which is Manhattan, Staten Island, AHEC, and the other one is the AAMC program. So Mount Sinai also has a summer undergraduate research program called CERC. So if you need any of this information, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. If you want to talk to Dr. Bowles about anything, please reach out to me. If you want to speak to Dr. Miller, schedule a one-on-one for any mentoring or any advice, please reach out to me and I will set whatever I can up with anybody on this network.
So one just to follow up on that, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
So for the students online, Dr. Bowles has said it over and over, but I want to just emphasize, you are a part of the SWAG network, and what you are doing now is developing your network. There are a number of people on this call who are on this call specifically because they want to help you achieve your goals. That's what this is all about. So I behoove you to take advantage of the people on this call. Reach out to them. We could be doing something else tonight. We're here because we want to help you. And if you don't reach out and take advantage of that, shame on you. So that's what that's what the Swag Network is all about. It's helping open doors for you. I really think that we've had a really good presentation today. Dr. Bowles he's got a point guard mentality. That's what I hear coming through here. He's a straight up point guard mentality. And it just emphasizes again how being involved in athletics, and yes, I do consider dance as a form of athletics, is a positive. It really helps you form a mindset that will lead to your success. And Dr. Bowles has exemplified that. And I hope you all took this to heart and you can do the same thing. It does come across that he's a very special person. He's a very motivated person, but he's also not doing anything that any of you couldn't do. And that's an important thing for you to realize. You all have the same background, have the same drive. You just have to get out there and do it. So with that, I want to thank you, Dr. Bowles. This was really a good, really great session for the students. Please follow up.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll turn it over to you, Anthony, to go ahead and close it out.
Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Dr. Miller, for passing that. Thank you, Dr. Bowles, for joining and being our guest speaker tonight. Greatly appreciate it. I hope all the students here just know that you have all the resources on this network to be great, and just take advantage of every opportunity in life. And sometimes, like they previously mentioned, you have to take the step forward in order to be successful. Opportunities are going to present themselves throughout time, throughout life, but you have to be prepared and ready to take that step, to take advantage of the opportunity. So that said, we're going to close out and hopefully see you at the next game plan. Please, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. And Dr. Bowles, you're the Ike that joined. He's not officially on the network, but please shoot me his information. So
Okay.
I'll start adding them to all of the email blasts.
Perfect. I will do that.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, guys. You guys stay safe. Thank you for joining.
Have a good
Thank
holidays,
you.
everyone.
Happy holiday.
you.
Great session.
Happy holiday.
Thank you.
Anthony, hold on, stay on for a minute.
Okay.
Rez, you're on the money.
Hi, sorry, I just had a real quick question. I just wanted to know where the presentation, since it has been recorded, where it could be looked at later, or like, just rewatched.
You're on mute, Anthony.
Sorry, Dr. Miller. One sec. I'll put it on mute for a second because I was on the phone.
So you're gonna answer, he has a question about the recording. Can you stop recording